You know what, Sam?
What?
I'm not mad, just disappointed.
That's worse. Yeah, so since our last episode, Andrew, we have a win and a loss, and well, we'll talk about that loss uh obviously later in the episode because that's very fresh in our minds right now as we're recording right after that game, Andrew.
Yeah, don't let our faces fool you. We are very annoyed by that game.
Yes, very, very annoyed. But first, like what we always do at the beginning of every episode, remember we have a great partnership with SeatGeek. You get $20 off your first purchase if you use promo code Caniac Report, all one word. It's a great deal if you're trying to save money on some tickets, whether that's to a comedy show, live concert, or to a Hurricanes game. And also, please remember hit like and subscribe if you are watching this on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you never miss another episode. And also, if you are listening to us wherever we get our podcasts, please leave a rating and a review. Really, really does help us out. And if you can bear my voice in this episode, you are a warrior because I'm sure you can probably a little bit tell, just a little bit congested. Not much though.
Yeah. No, we're both battling the changes of the season. Thank you to you, Sam, for going solo on that last episode, so I could curl up in a ball and die for a few days. We had the famous false spring week up here in Boston, and it never fails that I get sick. So we're both powering through, but I promise we're gonna convert on more of our chances in this podcast than the Canes did against the Blues.
Oh yeah, we definitely will. But I can tell you this right now, Andrew. Past few days, in terms of the weather here in North Carolina, and I'm sure those can vouch for this listening to us in North Carolina, but it felt like freaking summer, uh, especially during the afternoon, because it got hot.
Yeah, it's funny up here because our version of that, where like you get that just random burst of warm weather. Usually it's only like 55 degrees, but it's because we've gotten so used to it being like single digits. You'll still see people in like shorts and tank tops, even though it's like basically winter still.
Yeah,
So
that's crazy. Oh
yeah,
my
I'm
gosh.
I'm so ready for it though, man. Granted, I work in snow removal, but there hasn't been a winter where I've been just tapping out at the end quite like this one, and I'm sure it's the same down there because y'all actually got a bit of weather too. So
Yep.
bring on the spring, bring on the playoffs.
Yep. Playoff hockey is coming very, very soon. But Andrew, let's get to a couple news around the league. A couple things have happened. One of them is with the Utah Mammoth because they extended one of their great players in Nick Schmaltz on an 8-year, $8 million contract. Andrew, I think that is actually a very good deal for a guy that's a very good player for, I would say, probably both teams.
Yeah, when you look at Utah's kind of projection over the next few years, you assume that Logan Cooley will probably take the first center role, but
Yep.
at $8 million, like that's probably the going rate for a 2C now. And then at the back half of that contract, when he's going to be a little bit older, where you think it might be an overpay by then, if the salary cap keeps growing the way that it is, $8 million, that might be what a third line center gets. So I think it's a good bit of business by the Mammoth here.
Yes, definitely is. Really love that player. I think to me, he's been one of those persons where I've been like, as a Canes fan, you know what? I would not mind a Nick Schmaltz type of player on this team. I mean, I'm not saying that he will be. It's just he's that type of player where I would love to have him. You know?
Yeah, and he's one of those guys that it felt like he was almost like a Nick Ehlers kind of scenario where he was always linked to us in like trade rumors.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think Utah is looking at it like in a year or two, they could be like a legitimate contending team because they got some really good young pieces. I've said this a few times about them, but just thoughts going to all the fans in the Arizona area because they're watching this being like this
Oh
is
yeah.
what we were building and we're supposed to get to enjoy, if not for just awful ownership. So yeah, hate it for them.
Oh yeah, definitely. And the next bit of news, we're going to go into Canada here, specifically Ottawa, as they made news with making a deal of basically, you know what? We still would like to have a pick in the first round, so they decided to pay $1 million to try and draft the very and position themselves to be the very last pick in the first round, Andrew. And we know this is a team, obviously, that has struggled this season. So I'm sure they'd like to have some facet of a first round pick, you know?
Yeah, and I think Ottawa falls into the category of teams that aren't bad; they're just having a bad season. So them being able to spin kind of a wasted year into something positive with the draft pick is very important. For those who might not know the backstory on this, to give a brief summary, it's before the current ownership bought the team. There was some improper scouting done, and so the league cracked down on it. And I know it's been a big back and forth, kind of behind the scenes between the NHL head office and the Senators ownership, that they weren't made aware of this when they bought the team. So it's just been a big controversy, a big mess. So
Yeah,
you don't want to.
it was on Dadanoff, if you
Yes,
remember.
yeah, that's right. It was something about like he didn't have like the no trades weren't properly disclosed or something
Exactly,
like that.
that's what it was. Yep.
That's what it was. Okay, I knew it was something kind of silly and like bookkeeping wise. So I give Ottawa credit for kind of putting their money where it needed to go to make this go away. But I do feel for them that, from my understanding at least, it's that when they purchased the franchise that the league was kind of shady about this whole thing. But the NHL, as much as we love it, they do find ways to just do things that are just a little questionable on how they want to distribute their punishments.
They are. I will completely agree with that. So that's kind of it around the NHL. Not really much happening, obviously, with the trade deadline passed. Although Andrew Buffalo keeps, I mean, they're hot right now. Like they're competing with us in Tampa for winning the Eastern Conference. Can you believe that, Andrew?
If they stay this hot, they're a legitimate contender. And this did Kevin Adams get a raw deal getting fired? Because if memory serves me right, they were on like a 3-game winning streak when they let him go as the GM. And now look at them. They might be the hottest team in the Eastern Conference. I didn't think going into this year that I would be kind of worried to play Buffalo, because I think they're actually a pretty tough matchup for us.
Yeah, they definitely are looking like it. So we'll see how that goes. And I would say part of the standings is why I'm a little bit frustrated with the St. Louis game. Again, we'll get to it, but let's get to talking about the Hurricanes, Andrew. As a couple of news was released, we know one today was released with the new investors for the Hurricanes. We know Tom Dundon, Andrew, that he sold 12.5% of the team, and we have our investors from that selling point in Brett Jefferson, Bobby Farnham, and Mark Grandison are the new investors. I think one of them, I think, is Bobby Franheim, who was an NHL player, but other than that, I don't really know these guys a ton.
Yeah, I knew I recognized that name, but aside from that, yeah, I'm guessing it's probably not going to have a whole lot of impact that we see, or at least it really shouldn't for a minority investor. Just business being done behind the scenes. Obviously, this team generates a lot of profit, so hopefully, whatever impact they have is positive, and hopefully, I think overall what Dundon has done here has been really exceptional, and how quickly he's turned this around. So hopefully this doesn't change just the priorities of keeping a winning product on the ice.
Yes, definitely. I think I saw something. I think this might have been during intermission break during watching the St. Louis game. But I think I heard, like, with those investors, that the NHL would be generating more money with a possible new expansion team. I
Mhm.
could be wrong, but that'd be
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of the talking heads talk about how the league is eventually going to go to 36 teams just because of how many untapped markets there are, in particular in the States. There's a
Yep.
few cities in Canada that just because I know that it's a huge fan base and it's a major city for that country that they probably should get one. But I'm guessing that there's just such a firm grip on those towns and the media rights and all that kind of stuff that I don't think Canada's going to get another team. But you think about all the major cities who have baseball teams, football teams that don't have a hockey team. I think we're probably seeing it go to 36, and there's a lot of money to be made for the league for that because every expansion team is just getting more and more expensive.
Oh, it definitely is. Yeah, I think that's what it was just getting more expensive with the money. But the next thing of news, Andrew, is Alexander Nikishin. He broke a record. And when I saw that record, Andrew, obviously with him scoring his 9th goal, and this was against Pittsburgh, he now leads all rookie defensemen in franchise history with 9 goals. And when I saw that, Andrew, I was like, wow, that's a little bit of a low bar, isn't it, for a rookie defenseman? Just a
Yeah,
little
because
bit.
they've had some good ones. Let's not forget. If we're gonna count the Hartford days, this is a franchise that had Chris Pronger's rookie season, who that was one of my favorite players growing up. So when I learned that he was a Whaler, that's something I always kind of regretted that we didn't get to see him in Hurricanes uniform. But yeah, I want to say like third with 5 was Jamie McBain, which, with all due respect to, Jamie McBain, if that's someone who's even on the list, you know what I mean? But just hats off to him, man. It's been so fun to watch him grow this year as a player. The offense was kind of his reputation coming out of Russia, and you can see
Mm.
why that slap shot is an absolute cannon, but just how much the rest of his game has rounded out. He's a player to be really excited about, and I think he's just scratching the surface of what he could be.
Oh yeah, definitely. I agree. But it is funny. Like you mentioned Jamie McBain. I was like, man, he's on that list.
Mhm.
What? Because that was during the dark ages, and like to be honest, after that rookie season, he didn't really live up to anything. I would have thought that the player he had to surpass would be Justin Falk,
Same.
but it wasn't him. It was JB McBain, so that surprised me to be honest.
Yeah, this I feel like this franchise does have a pretty rich history in defensemen, but we've always kind of had like the overachieving, lovable third pair guy. Because like when you
Mm-hmm.
think NHL, when you think Kane's demon, once you get past, the Slavins, the Glenn Wesleys, I think about guys like, Nicky Wallin, just that like out of nowhere playoff miracle guy.
Oh
So
yeah.
so maybe there just isn't the offensive defenseman prowess that you would expect from just how many good guys have come through here. But again, just hats off to Nikishin, and the best is yet to come. I'm really excited to see what he does in these playoffs because I think I'm guessing the leash is going to be let off a little bit in terms of his aggressive play.
Oh yeah, I do too. But yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with you on like the history of like getting that bona fide offensive defenseman because you look at the history, like, I mean, Ryan Murphy was once a player that we thought would be a very good offensive defenseman. Didn't pan
Oh, yeah.
out. And Noah
He was,
Hannafin, so much hype. Didn't really pan out. We traded him.
well, it didn't pan out here. He's become really really good,
He
and
did. He has.
that trade, you can apply hindsight to it. When
Mhm.
they made the trade,
Oh yeah.
Adam Fox came this way too, and if he had signed here, then it's an absolute win. But I think it fast forwarded the progress because Dougie was obviously crucial, and
He was.
one of the biggest what ifs in recent Hurricanes history is what if Michael Furlan could have stayed healthy because he was absolutely crushing it for a while there, and then he just like couldn't stay healthy. So yeah, I think Hannafin was a good one. Glenn Wesley obviously speaks for itself, but we'll have to do an episode over the summer where we just play the game of let's talk about some dudes. Remember Jamie McBain?
Yeah, Jamie McBain, Derek Ryan.
Doc Ryan.
Yeah, Doc Ryan.
Yeah, I actually have in my little man cave, I have one of the game flyers from the season with Derek Ryan, and that's just kind of a funny little piece of Canes history from the dark ages where Derek Ryan was a flyer where was a poster worthy player on this team, with all due respect to Derek Ryan. But yeah, times sure have changed.
Yeah. What's funny, to be honest, I did not like, I remember because there was an actual line. I did not like the line of Skinner, Derek Ryan, and Lee Stepniak. Remember that line? Because I just felt like Skinner was dragging that line.
Stepniak. Let's talk about some dudes.
Yeah.
We're gonna get sidetracked just being like, remember Jeff Hamilton? Remember Joe Corvo? Remember?
Oh no, Corvo. That was his nickname.
I think you mean Scorvo.
Or Scorbo, maybe, yeah.
Depending on the game, right?
Oh yeah, Chris Terry.
Oh geez. All right. That is
okay.
Enough of that. We are in the
I'm done.
Sketching the Cuff era. These are happier times, damn it.
Yes, they are happier. A lot happier. Gosh, let me through the dark gate. Okay, I'm done. All right. Okay. So that's it. No, actually, one more thing of Hurricanes news, and that is Shane Gostisbehere, Andrew, because he's the only player that's hurt. And it sucks, Andrew, because I mean he's expected to miss quite a few games. And he's played so good. It's just it sucks with the season in the fact of that the guy cannot stay healthy.
Yeah. Hopefully the silver lining here is that it's forcing Nikishin to have to step up and take some of those bigger reps, which could pay dividends come playoffs. Same with Keandre Miller too, actually, because I really liked Keandre. There's definitely an offensive side of his game that he just hasn't gotten to since he's been here. Everything else, I think he's grown into quite nicely for his first year. But yeah, there's just no substituting Ghost's vision. I mean, just that quick little wrist shot and just how he just creates perfect rebounds. But man, with where the standings are, with that silver lining of Nikishin getting some important reps, I don't want him even thinking about touching the ice until he's 100%. There are bigger, more important things right now. So take your time, Ghost. Take your time.
I would agree with that. It's just, again, we talk about him playing so well. I mean, this is not to criticize the current defenseman on the team, but I do think the dynamic changes a little bit with Gostisbehere out, because he provides a lot of, like what you said, vision, creativity, and great playmaking on that blue line.
Yeah, he's certainly the most dynamic defenseman, maybe one of the more dynamic and creative offensive players on this team, period. But again, would love to see Nikishin seize the moment and step up. And I mean, I would say in a lot of ways he has got to give a shout out to Mike Riley. I called him out a couple of games ago on Twitter, and I think he's actually been better in the two games since. Still obviously the 7th D-man. I think I would still rather Nystrom in that role, but he has shown that he is a serviceable depth, which you will need come playoffs more than likely. But yeah, just take your time and get well soon, Ghost. And looking forward to having you back. But let's zoom out and just look at the big picture right now. He could not play another game the rest of this regular season. If it means he's healthy for game 1 of the playoffs, fine. I'll take it.
Yeah, I definitely will too. So, Andrew, let's go ahead and get to a sponsor, and then we'll recap the Pittsburgh and the St. Louis game. DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, is built for the fastest game on ice. With player props and live betting every shift, Every shot, every save gives you options to get in on the game with DraftKings Sportsbook. New customers, bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN to turn $5 into $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Connecticut, call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. On behalf of Blue Hill Casino in Kansas, wager tax pass-through may apply in Illinois. 21 plus in most states. Void in Ontario. Restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Limited time offer. Copyright 2026. NHL. All rights reserved. All right, Andrew, the Pittsburgh game. This game, boy, it was on steroids. It just was. And first period, obviously, the first goal comes from the Stankoven line, as it's Stankoven himself who kind of finds the rebound and the massive humanity, as John Forthland likes to say, and he is able to score. So great goal by Stankoven, Andrew. And I mean, that second line's played pretty good. They just have.
Yeah, they need to convert on more of the chances that they're generating. But we've seen that with like even the best players. Sometimes you just have a line where the guys just can't get those lucky bounces. That unfortunately is a part of winning hockey. But I really feel like since the trade deadline passed, it almost seems like Stankoven has been able to exhale and be like, okay, I'm not going to have to play fourth line wing or have to try to stay focused on learning this center role while doing something else for the time being. And it just seems like he's just playing with a little bit more confidence, a little bit more belief that he's where he's supposed to be. I'm really excited about how that second line has looked. Frankly, it's probably been the most impactful line since the trade deadline. There's been games where they haven't been, the most popping off the page on the stat sheet, but in terms of just the eye test, the consistent impact every single shift, that line and the fourth line honestly have been the most consistent lines the past few games.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you get an assist from Riley and Blake, and then came a scary moment in that first period. And Ehlers, love his skating ability, but I can't remember which Pittsburgh player it was. It might have been Letang. Could be wrong there. But regardless, he gets hit along the boards, and you see him kind of being very concerned about his knee, and he's laying on the ice for a very, very long time. Andrew, when I saw that play, I was like, oh no.
Yeah, the season flashed right before our eyes, because if Ehlers goes down, really if anybody in that top six goes down, we're in trouble. Because at that point you're having to call up Nadeau and hope that those AHL numbers actually translate. Which, quick little sidebar on Nadeau, only because I brought him up on X in the trade discussions. I think we need to remember sometimes that just because you light it up in the AHL doesn't mean it's going to translate. There's been so many guys throughout the history of the league that has happened. I'm not saying that's going to be Nadeau, but if that's your fallback plan is an unproven guy who is lighting up the league in his early 20s, that's not overly reassuring. But just big exhale when he came back out in the second man, because that really felt like it was going to be another few games after the trade deadline, and one of our best wingers goes down. You might remember that happened with Svech 3 or 4 years ago. And you know what, that was a trade deadline too, where they didn't do a whole lot because they didn't think that they needed to, and then suddenly and violently, oh yes you did. And Tulski above anybody should be breathing a sigh of relief, because he almost had some egg on his face for not pulling the trigger on anything.
And it's It's a little bit funny the fact that like Ehlers, he goes down, he's hurt in that first period. You don't know if he's coming back or not. I felt like that kind of affected the player's performance a little bit for the Canes just because of how important of a player he was. And we found out in the locker room after that game with the post game interviews, Andrew. Like, I remember Jackson Blake saying that he's an important player to our team. And I would agree. He's very important. He is he's clearly the fourth player in terms of point production on our team. Like, he's very important. And I do think that was probably part of the reason, and I mean, there are other reasons too, obviously, but I think that was part of the reason to me why uh, Pittsburgh tied it up with Mantha scoring.
Yeah, it's unfortunately it's a part of the game. Injuries, obviously there was nothing malicious there, just a really unfortunate knee on knee type of play going into the boards. But you know, if it had been the other way and say it was Malkin that got hurt, you would kind of need the Canes to be like, hey, we need to attack right now because
Exactly.
they're obviously freaking out right now. But just kind of counting our blessings that Ehlers looks fine. Looked like he was skating just fine in the St. Louis game. So knock on wood and all that kind of stuff. But whenever you see a guy go down like that and just immediately reach for his knee, like you can't help but assume the worst.
Exactly. And it seems like we're seeing a trend here because I think it's happened for 2 games in a row now, Andrew. But in the first period, Carolina dominated against Pittsburgh, but yet only tied 1-1. So to me, that's a little bit of an area that probably needs to be addressed, and the fact that probably needed to get a little bit more out of our first periods because of how dominant we are.
Yeah, I think that's kind of been the curse on this team really since Brendan Moore became coach, because a lot of times they do come out firing, and there's just been such a desperate need to fix the finishing issues on this team, which is, it's unfortunate because there's so many guys on this team that go through hot streaks where they can't miss. And then it just feels like there's games where collectively they all just decide they don't know how to shoot anymore. That was more so the case in the Blues game than the Pittsburgh game that we're on now, but still that trend of just great first periods. You have a chance to put yourself in a position to, play more defensive hockey, which we know the Canes are just better at anyway, not going into a shell, but just playing smart puck possession hockey. And now you're going into a second period where the other team's going, okay, we're still in this. You get one or two lucky bounces, and next thing you know, it's a closer game than it should be. So, not sure what the remedy is to that, because you can't change the dominant starts they've been having, but the guys just need to find a way to convert, man. There's no other way to say it.
Yep. And in the second period, you start to see again, kind of like in St. Louis, which we'll recap later, but Pittsburgh, you can tell like they got dominated in the first period. They're going to come out in the second period being a little bit more feisty because they're going to be thinking, oh gosh, we played such a bad first period against this team. We got to come out playing better. Like, that's what you need to think if you're a Hurricanes player. And if you think that, maybe you don't have that second period where it's like night and day from the first period, because they go up with Brian Russ scoring.
Yeah, that Pittsburgh team is it's just a veteran, experienced, and now really well coached team. What they've been able to do since Crosby's been hurt and now Malkin being suspended is just really impressive. That's just a really smart, disciplined hockey team, and they were able to fight back in a game that really they shouldn't really even have been in the first place. But again, the Canes, they keep leaving that door cracked, and teams like Pittsburgh are going to find ways to scratch and claw back and win.
Yes, they do, and they kind of almost did in this game. But in the third period, Andrew, we got to see Carolina kind of break through with the goals early on, because you have 3 goals with Jankowski from Carrier and Nikishin. Jarvis from Svetch. I thought that was the prettiest goal of the game. That was such a beautiful goal. And then you have Nikishin scoring from a great pass from Aho, where the Pittsburgh goalie, he left a big gaping opening net for Nikishin, and when you leave that for Nikishin, probably gonna score. Maybe not Ehlers, but for Nikishin, yes.
Yeah, that Nikishin goal was just such a perfect cat and mouse 5-5-on-3 goal. Which the frustrating thing then is that they got another 5-on-3 opportunity and just basically were playing hot potato with the puck. So just it's just a consistency issue, and I know that this team is probably having to deal with a bit of the short of a collapse. They got the Metro locked up. Maybe they're able to get the first seed in the East, but right now, if you could pick anything from these next 15 or so games, nobody gets hurt, and that's such a weird competitive place to be in. And I think that we have seen that a little bit. That's not to make excuses, that this is what they're paid to do, is to get up and perform. But if there's games where maybe a team a little bit more desperate and in the standings is coming out and is able to take advantage of the Canes taking a breath, it makes some sense, but it's becoming a trend, because this is where you want to see those good habits really start to take hold.
Yes, I completely agree. And you have obviously Pittsburgh tying it up with basically collapse. It was like the last 2 minutes of that game where Pittsburgh, they pull their goalie, and you have Achari and Russ scoring. Now, we know Frederick Anderson started in this game, Andrew, and we have to talk about the goalie performance, because goaltending is a hot subject for the Hurricanes. And I would say probably the first goal, I think he could have stopped in that Pittsburgh game, but the other goals, they were kind of lucky type of goals. Like it was off of shin pads and skates that came right to the Pittsburgh players and then. And it's frustrating, but I actually thought Anderson played a pretty good game, to be honest.
Yeah, I completely agree. I thought that overall it was a very encouraging game from Freddie. The game tying goal, a tough bounce off of Miller. There was that one goal where Martin Hook had to give his stick to Slavin, and he winds up kind of getting put on a poster with a pass. So just it's hard to look at a game where a goalie gives up 4 goals, save percentage is under 900, and say, wow, that was a good step. But no, this was a good step for Freddie. Really, the 2 games we're going to talk about in this, both, I think you can't really ask much more from the goalies. Freddie's looks uglier again just because of bad luck, maybe a little bit of don't want to call it soft play from the Canes, but a little bit of like I said, there's a certain urgency that I think is lacking the last few games, and it's not excusable, but it's understandable, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'll say it later in a few minutes, but when it comes to the lack of urgency, I wonder, but again, I'll get to it. When it comes to the game, though, we go into an overtime. To me, the only thing that had me screaming at overtime, Andrew, was the fact that, Svetch. Listen, I understand he probably has a reputation. I think we all know he has a reputation against the officials, but it's obvious he's 100 feet away from the puck. I know I'm exaggerating a little bit, but he's a long way away from the puck, and he gets interfered with. And then you have Slavin, who I didn't even see a slash there, and they call that a penalty. I just don't understand that at all, man.
Yeah, it feels like sometimes they call penalties with the intention of making the game more exciting or more compelling, more even. Yeah, I don't like harping on the officials too much, but that game in particular was pretty egregious to me. Even going into overtime, the Penguins got put on a power play. And granted, sure, it's a penalty, but there were at least 3 or 4 penalties by Pittsburgh leading up to that they just didn't call for whatever reason. These were, middle of the ice. Everyone saw it. I can't remember the exact plays, but I do remember thinking like, okay, wow, they got away with this, and this, and now they're on the power play. So just questionable. But I mean, kudos to the Canes for powering through. And then we won a game in a shootout. So maybe Rod does know what he's doing.
Yeah. Blake and Stankoven scoring. I mean, Kendall scored. To me, that's a goal. Honestly, Anderson probably shouldn't have had. Regardless, though, they went in a shootout, Andrew, and it should not have gone into a shootout. We should have won that game in regulation. We should have put it away on that second 5-on-3, like you said earlier. But I mean, Canes were pass happy, looking for the perfect shot. Just good God. And one more thing I'll say about the officials, Andrew. When I usually watch a game, I give them some grace. So, like, if they miss a penalty here and there, okay. But my biggest thing is, does this keep continuing? And I feel like it really, really did at absurd points. And I was like, okay. So that's my only thing.
Yeah, it's been interesting because you mentioned Svech, and like that is kind of like almost a joke about him at this point, right? That like the refs are watching him extra tight. I feel like Svech this year, for how impactful he's been, for how much he's been playing physical and smart, he's been doing a good job staying out of the box. And then this game, there were 2 ticky tack at best penalties called against him, and then yeah, hopefully that's not a trend of just for whatever reason he's back on their watch list, because this year it's actually been Taylor Hall that seems to have the refs irk. So
yes,
they're humans. Like I think we take for granted just how fast this game is from the stands and just watching it on TV. The officials in this game are insane athletes. They really are. And, the refs sometimes miss stuff. I don't think the linesmen in this sport get enough credit for how often they get it right, for how quick and narrow watching the blue line is, but got to be better than that by the playoffs. And unfortunately, just because A, of how difficult this is to officiate, and B, just what I've grown to expect from this league, there's always at least 1 or 2 games in every playoffs where it's the ref, where it's the officiating is the biggest story. And that shouldn't.
It shouldn't. Yeah, it really shouldn't. So that's it with my beef of officials. So now the St. Louis game, Andrew, and this was the complete opposite of what the Pittsburgh game was. From looking at this game from a very, very large scheme of things, I'm not concerned. No. I mean, you're going to lose games. But at the same time, it seems like I am a little bit disappointed because of 3 things. One, you look at the standings, and this is me finally explaining it. Like, Carolina's right there with Buffalo, Tampa. I mean, you kind of need, and I would say you kind of want to have some of a sense of urgency, considering if you win the Eastern Conference, you're guaranteed home ice through the first 3 rounds. So there's that part. The second part is the history with this team already, because if you remember, Andrew, the last time we versed this team this season was when we got shut out 4-0. So I had a little problem just thinking about that too. And third, I forgot. But those were the 2. And I guess the third part was just more of just like, I mean, St. Louis, I thought they played the exact same game when we faced them at their place and we lost 4-0. It just seems like that type of play, that type of style they play, just seems like Carolina has a hard time beating that. Again, kind of just has me just a little bit concerned,
Yeah, I mean, we definitely see that sometimes in all sports where there's a team that on paper should be inferior, but for whatever reason, it's just a matchup nightmare. I remember it was a thing just because I listened to the SDPN a lot, that like the Leafs went on a crazy winless streak against the Coyotes, and that's back when the Coyotes were like the laughing stock of the league. So it does happen for whatever reason, but you don't want to discredit Bennington tonight. He played an incredible game, but the fact that this game wasn't a game where the guys are in the locker room with their moms giving Bussy a bunch of praise because, we know he's, this is the first stretch he's had where his play hasn't been good, which that's going to happen with any goaltender. Every goalie goes through a couple of games of cold streak. It's how do you bounce back? This should have been, and hopefully it still is. Hopefully they're going in there and telling him, hey man, you did everything you needed to do to win this game. We didn't come through on our side of it, but they let Bussy down, man, because this should have been a big step in him just kind of regaining that swagger that he had before the Olympic break.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at those two goals, Andrew. I mean, both were from one guy, and that was Snuggard. Like, to be honest, are those goals that I think Bussy needs to have? Yes, I do. But there's only so much blame I can put on the goalie when you only score one goal.
Right. When you basically double up the other team in shots. At one point, they were out shooting them like 14-2 or something, 1-0.
Yes.
You're dominating the game like that. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, would you like him to have those goals? Sure, but one was just an absolutely filthy shot to the far corner with Slavin. Not that he did anything wrong, but the shot was timed perfect. That Slavin did actually act as kind of a screen. And then the next one, you get one of those unlucky bounces. It goes behind the net against the board, pops over Chatfield's stick, puck jumps out. Could you say Bussy maybe should have been hugging the post a little bit tighter? Sure, but such a bang play where the puck just leaks out right in front of the net to a guy who's clearly feeling it that night.
Yeah, honestly, the top pair, Slavin and Chatfield, it was a rough game for them. Like what you said, Slavin was kind of used as a screen. Chatfield, I think he has a huge responsibility of the second goal and the fact that he was not able to retrieve the puck along the boards. And not to mention, I mean, our captain, Jordan Stahl, was right in front of Snuggard, right there, and just lets him shoot the puck. So, well, yes, Bussy probably could have saved those goals. It's also on the guys in front of him, too. So, I don't think this is the type of game where you can gauge his performance just because Canes were not at their best after the first period.
No, and games like this are tricky because you don't want to do moral victories, especially now with a team this good. But I do think there's a lot from this game that they can take into a film session and say, okay, everything other than putting the puck in the net, which obviously isn't a small thing, but everything leading up to your opportunity to do that, they did great. Like you would take maybe not exactly this game, but if Carolina plays this game, more often than not, they're going to come away with the win. Like I would pick them to win that game at least 7 out of 10 times, just the way it looked. Bennington absolutely stole this for them, which we've seen both with the Blues and also playing for the Canadians, that he just has potential to have these games where he looks unbeatable. And I'll give him credit. This was one of those games, but just how many opportunities they created and who they were created for. I mean, I think Aho played a halfway decent game tonight, but how many times did he get an absolutely beautiful pass where the puck is on his tape and he's right in front of the net? Most games he's gonna find a way to get at least one of those in. I think this was just one of those nights, one of those games. You try to take the positive stuff that there was actually a good bit of, which I know they probably don't want to hear that as much as the fans don't want to, but I mean, when you zoom out, they did a lot of good tonight. They just got to execute a little better, and they got basically a month left of just start building these good habits. Don't get frustrated. Don't break away from the system. The talent is there. It's gonna come through. But even in the playoffs, we see this where there's games where just for whatever reason you just couldn't finish. There's a reason that the playoffs are best of 7 because games like this happen.
Oh yeah, Do you think we're at a point where basically mostly everyone thinks Jankowski right now is better than KK? Because I can tell you this, that was such a filthy play by Jankowski. I don't know KK. I don't know. I don't think KK would have been able to pull that off, to be honest.
Brother, I think we were there last year. Remember. Do you remember when we first got Jankowski and how he was just Wayne
Oh yeah.
for like a week? He's got some skill, man, and I wouldn't say he's the most physical player, but he's not. But he doesn't play as scared. I think he's a great fourth line center. Um, the one thing I would love to see tried in that bottom six is just swap Martin Hook and Carrier, because I think Martin Hook just needs a little bit of less ice time right now, just so he can just focus on just being that 110% full speed guy, because he just seems a little bit gassed out there. Not that he's not making good plays. I think some fans have kind of turned on him a little bit quickly. You know, that's just kind of how the internet is. They need to have that one whipping boy, and right now it's Martin Hook.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about him just because he's not meant to give you a lot of scoring. He's that energy guy, and he always provides that. And he's one of those players too, where once he gets into the playoffs, he becomes a different human being in a positive way.
Right. They just need to make a thing for every home game where they go into the other locker room and be like, "Hi, so we're doing something for charity. We need you guys to wear these jerseys tonight. These are New Jersey Devil jerseys, sir. Yes, they are."
Yeah. Well, that's it for the 2 games. I'm trying to think of anything else, but I think that's pretty much it. You have anything, Andrew?
Nope. Just I think if there's one thing I would say to fans is that the roster is what it is, man. I think that they are a legitimate contender. Are they favorites? No, I think they're dark horse. I think they're a legitimate dark horse. They can get hot at the right time. Right now, I think we just got to rally behind these guys, in particular the goalies, prop them up, because as much as they want to not hear the outside noise, I guarantee that they do. So as fans, let's just rally, man, because I think the vibes are going to be important for this one.
Oh, they are. And we have an important game coming up against Tampa. The next game on Saturday. That's going to be a big one.
Yep, and they're going to come out swinging, man, because I don't know if you caught that Buffalo.
Oh
Tampa,
my gosh, that was crazy.
Yep. So Tampa's going to be coming in here with that energy. I don't expect the Canes to be throwing punches back the same way, but if they're going to be that team that wants to be above all that and show their toughness by staying focused, which I do think that they don't get enough credit for, because softer teams commit penalties when teams like Florida and stuff do what they try to do to the Canes. There's a mental toughness to how this team plays, but yeah, that's going to be a good benchmark game, man. And if you're one of these guys trying to say, "Hey, come playoff time, I deserve the ice time," this is where you got to show it.
Exactly. Well, we will see you guys next time.